I always think of like Citizen Kane, right? Um, he's like one of the most famous, richest people in the world, but he's in an empty home and he just got, out of his relationship and all that. And I feel like that's like a classic example of like, you can have everything, but if you don't have anyone around to share with, then what's it all worth, right?
Yeah. I mean, I experienced that actually when my song, I mean, we can segue.
Yeah,
we can bring them all together, actually, both conversations, because I experienced going from like starving artist, literally like struggling very hard in New York City, living in a shoebox, to suddenly having my song blow up and being everywhere, top charting in like 21 countries international and like top 10 and many more. And then suddenly, my dream was to play Wembley Stadium packed at some point in my life. And I was playing Wembley Stadium 4 months into my song coming out. And so I got to that point where I was like, well, now what do I do?
Yeah.
And hit this like massive success that was in my mind. Getting to this point was where everything would come together, where all my happiness would be fulfilled, where I'd have, access to whatever I wanted, and that would be happiness. And weirdly enough, it was like the saddest time in my life because it was so off balance.
Yeah.
I had no time for myself. I lost my social relationships. I was working way too hard to maintain that level. You get there and then you have to maintain it, and it takes everything out of you.
One of my very successful friends said it's hard to get to the top. It's even harder to stay there.
Yeah, and you have to ask yourself, why am I staying here? It's like you climb Mount Everest, but are you going to hang out at the top? You can't breathe.
Right.
You need to breathe, so you got to kind of go down and go up again. But
that's a good analogy. I mean, what was Wembley like? I mean,
it was crazy.
I know it's like the Freddie Mercury Live Aid.
Yeah, that was it. That was like, I was like, I want that. It was a show like that too. It was a mixed show. So it had like Ariana Grande and Taylor Swift and I don't know, a bunch of huge artists at the time. Then it was a big radio show. And they put me on an elevator and they're like, you're going to pop out at some point. And I was like, when? They're like, I don't know, but you're just going to pop up.
Just be ready for the biggest moment ever.
No, this is not cool. No. And I popped up and there was 88,000 people towering above me going like, I went instantly into a high. My first note I sang wrong. I was like I gulped and then I was like, okay, got this. And then I was so high off the crowd by the end of it that I actually got lost. Like I got off, I was the only artist who, like, there was like a thrust that went way into the crowd, and then there was just the big stage, and every artist either performed on one or the other, and I started on one and ran out to the other and ended on the end. Wow. So I had to come down the stage in the middle of the audience, and I was just like feeling it so much that I was just talking to everybody in the crowd and taking pictures, and they lost me, and apparently they were sending security to try to find me for a while. And
good luck.
Actually lost in the crowd.
My team was really pissed when I came back. And I was just like, what? Why is everyone so like upset?
That was great.
But yeah, you really that's the biggest, even though it wasn't the most, I'd say, connected show because it was a mixed crowd. And obviously Taylor Swift has more fans than I did. But the energy I got from that huge crowd, it put me into the biggest crowd high I've ever experienced.
What is that feeling? I've been on stage in front of tens and hundreds. I don't know how many the most I've been in front of, but pretty big. But I wasn't performing.
Right, yeah, it's different.
Much different.
It's one thing to see the crowd. It's another thing to have the crowd reacting to your every move. And you're like the conductor of this ocean of souls, essentially. And you tell them to do something and they do it. You tell them to scream and they scream. It's like, there's a bit of a godlike feeling to it when they're fully connected to you. They're like, you're also their anchor. You're holding everyone in this room down, and there's a lot of pressure that goes with that. And so your adrenaline just kicks in. And it's fun.
And they're like trusting you to conduct, right?
Yeah. Well, the thing is you get off stage. That's the problem. And I'm on a new journey, which we'll talk about too in my life right now, where everyone talks about getting on stage and getting the high on stage and fully connecting and finding yourself on stage. I am now at a point where when I teach people, I'm like, you need to be able to walk off stage and be okay, because that's where the real crash happens. Because when you get to that point where you're so fully switched on and you get off stage, everything by contrast just feels numb.
Mm.
And you go into your hotel room and you're staring at a blank wall and you're like, wait, what is going on? Why am I here? There's no feedback. And you just have trouble balancing just your regular existence with that feeling that you get on stage, and life becomes dull in comparison. So
That's interesting.
Therein lies I call it the turning both ways, living in two directions.
Yeah.
You really have to go inward equally, and there's balance in that too, in an equal amount that you go outward, or else you will cave in one direction or the other.
That's fascinating. I've never heard that before. I mean, obviously, I think that's something that maybe musicians can all relate to and share, but also maybe comedians and people that are in front of big stages. But
yeah,
I'm thinking of that like as an actor, and I'm like, yeah, maybe we get like 200 people in a room max. And maybe there's millions of people viewing the work, but I can't imagine what it's like in front of a crowd like that. That's incredible.
I think in that sense, it's a little easier and more balanced to be an actor. Because when you find comedians, musicians, they deal with some of the highest level of depression in the world. Especially comedians. I think they're number one because they're going out and they're making people laugh, but then they walk off stage and like life isn't a joke.
And there's a lot of truth, right, to like some of the jokes they tell if they're feeling something or something in their life. It's like they're actually taking some pain and their way of dealing with pain is turning it into a joke.
Yeah.
So if the more jokes they have, sometimes the more pain it could be.
And they're helping other people process their pain, but
True.
They're not laughing.
True.
You know, they're being laughed at. They're the ones who actually need the most help, and they need somebody doing that for them. They're doing it for everybody else. Yeah.
Thanks for watching Studio 22.
Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and hit the bell.
Thanks for tuning in to Studio 22.